The night was as still as the desert sand, the air thick with the weight of what had transpired. Ava Ellis stood at the base's edge, her silhouette outlined against the vast, empty horizon. In the distance, the base hummed with activity, the sounds of engines starting, technicians still moving, and the faint buzz of low voices floating in the air. But in this moment, it all felt distant. Ava had come into this place as an outsider, a mere consultant, dismissed and underestimated by everyone who had crossed her path. They had seen her as a relic, someone who didn't belong in their world of cutting-edge technology and military dominance. But now, as she stood here, victorious, she realized how much more than the program had changed. It was not just the drones that were fixed, it was the balance of power itself. And yet, the satisfaction of her success was fleeting. She had made her mark, shown them all what she was capable of, but she knew that wasn't enough. In this world, winning was never as simple as getting the job done. Holden hadn't been broken yet. She knew the type. Men like him didn't just fade into the background. He would come for her, and he wouldn't stop until he had regained control. Ava felt a presence behind her and instinctively turned. Her hand went to the small, familiar knife she kept tucked in her belt, but it was not Holden's heavy footsteps she heard. No, it was Lieutenant Kai Jensen. He had watched from the shadows, seen it all unfold, and now he was standing in front of her. She didn't expect him, but his face, once filled with cocky arrogance, now held something different. Something real. Respect. "You did it," he said, his voice low, uncertain. Ava looked at him for a long moment. She saw the change in him, saw the way he was beginning to understand that the world wasn't just about strength or dominance. That it was about something deeper. "I couldn't let it fall apart," she replied softly, her voice tinged with something that sounded like regret, but wasn't quite. "You could have let it fail," Jensen continued, his eyes meeting hers with a raw sincerity she hadn't expected from him. "You could have walked away." Ava shook her head slightly, her gaze moving back to the base, as if her thoughts were out there, somewhere in the quiet distance. Failure doesn't come from defeat. It comes from not knowing when to let go, from holding on too tight to what doesn't work. Jensen stood in silence, absorbing her words. His mind was racing, trying to catch up with everything that had just happened. The success, the defeat of General Holden, the revelation that the quiet, unassuming consultant was not who they thought she was. But still, he had questions. He had to know. "Why didn't you tell us?" he asked, his voice filled with a mix of awe and confusion. "Who you really were, what you really could do." Ava turned to him now, her eyes locking with his. There was something in the way she looked at him that was both distant and deeply knowing. She had seen too much, lived too much. "I don't need to explain myself to anyone. Not to you, not to Holden, not to anyone. I'm not here for approval or recognition. I'm here to finish what I started." Jensen swallowed, a flicker of understanding in his eyes. He didn't know what she had been through, could never understand, but in this moment, he knew she was right. They were all just part of something bigger. Ava turned and began walking toward the exit, her steps measured, as always. She was calm, as if everything that had happened in the last few days was nothing more than a routine. But inside, something shifted. She was no longer just the woman who fixed the drones. No, she was something more, something that wouldn't be easily contained. And she knew the fight wasn't over. It had only just begun. Behind her, Jensen stood, watching as she disappeared into the night. He didn't know what would happen next. What would come of Holden's threats, of the Pentagon's demands, of the mysterious project Valkyrie consultant. But what he did know, deep down, was that he would never forget this moment. The moment when a woman he had once underestimated had turned everything on its head. He had seen power shift before, but never like this. Ava Ellis had done what none of them thought possible. She had taken down the general who mocked her, a man who had lived for control, who had dismissed her as nothing. And in doing so, she had made them all question what it meant to truly lead. The next day, Holden stood in his office, staring out the window. The sun was just beginning to rise, casting a golden light over the base, and yet he felt the darkness closing in around him. His world was crumbling. Ava had humiliated him, outsmarted him, and now she was gone, her presence lingering like a shadow that he couldn't escape. His career, his reputation, it all seemed meaningless now. He had been bested by someone he thought was beneath him. His fingers tightened around the edge of his desk. This wasn't over. No, it couldn't be. He wouldn't let her win. He would find a way to take back control. But Ava was no longer his to command. She had walked out, leaving him with nothing but the knowledge that he had underestimated her, and paid the price for it. The door to his office creaked open, and the sound of footsteps brought him back to reality. Lieutenant Jameson entered, his expression tight, professional, as always. But there was a flicker of unease in his eyes. General, the new consultant, the one from Project Valkyrie, they're expecting a report on the progress of the program. They want results, and they want them now. Holden's heart sank. The walls were closing in. He wasn't sure how much longer he could keep up the facade of control. His grip on power had been shattered, and now it was all slipping away. He turned to Jameson, his voice low, filled with a quiet, desperate fury. I'm not going to lose this. Not to her. Not to anyone. Jameson said nothing, his eyes flicking nervously to the door. General, there's something else, he began. Holden's eyes darkened. What? Jameson hesitated, clearly uncomfortable. There's a message from the Pentagon. It's about Ellis. Holden stood up, the papers on his desk scattering. His pulse quickened. What about her? Jameson looked him dead in the eye. She's not just a consultant, sir. She's been officially reinstated into a special operations unit. They've moved her up the chain. The Navy is calling her back into service. She's not done yet. Holden stood there, his mind racing. The words felt like a punch in the gut. Ava Ellis wasn't just a ghost. She was a force, one that he couldn't control, one that he would never be able to hold down, and that, more than anything, terrified him. T.O.B. continued. What will Holden do now that Ava is officially back in action? Will Ava's past as a Navy SEAL come back to haunt her? What are the true stakes of the Project Valkyrie involvement, and how does it change the game? Will Ava and Holden face off again? And if so, who will come out on top? Stay tuned for Part 4. The final battle is about to begin. Please subscribe to Heart Touch Chronicles for more gripping, emotional tales of resilience, strength, and the human spirit.